Hi everyone, welcome again to our course, and I am one of your instructors, Sir Cedric, and together with me is Sir Philip. Welcome to our course once again, and now we are in our week 15 to 16. I hope you are working with your module, you are pushing and doing your requirements. So, let's discuss for this week about the ethical issues. So, ethical issues comprises a lot of human-kind activity like death penalty, legalization of marijuana, prostitution, abortion, euthanasia, and so much more. So, what are ethical issues and how can this be related and be affected by our moral dilemma? So, let's learn more about this. So, ethical issues occur when a given decision, scenario, or activity creates a conflict with the society's moral principles. Basically, there is a destitution that happens when our human action doesn't fit or doesn't seem right. Okay, so if we want something that is beneficial to us and that we feel it's quite appropriate and quite helps us or benefits us, but it's not appropriate in the legal standpoint, or it doesn't really go along to our own moral principles, that can be an ethical issues. So both individuals and even businesses can be involved in these conflicts, since any of their activities might be put to question from any ethical standpoint. An example of this is perhaps spying from any business organization, or corruption of privacy or confidentiality. Those are some things that can have an ethical issue or that could result to an ethical issue. Okay, so these conflicts are sometimes legally dangerous since some of the alternatives to solve the issue might breach a particular law. So, in the precedent, it might not go along with what you wanted to do or what kind of result you wanted to do. In other occasions, the issue might not have legal consequences, but it might generate a negative reaction from third parties. So ethical issues are challenging because they are difficult to deal with if no guidelines or precedents are known. I think this really happens a lot if there are no legal issues, or if there are no legal law or legal guidelines about a particular thing. So the human's action can be ambiguous. So a person might be confused of what should be done if this particular thing is happening, or if you wanted to pursue something but there are moral principles that might be disrupted or might not be go along to what you wanted to happen in your life. So that is an ethical issue. So it really requires judgment and rational thinking. So, okay, moral dilemma. I want to discuss moral dilemma because I totally believe that when there are moral dilemma, it could result to an ethical issue, but not all the time. Okay, not all the time a moral dilemma can result to an ethical issue, because moral dilemmas are sometimes they can be solved. Okay, it can possibly solve on a particular moment, which cannot result to an ethical issue which is widespread in the society. A moral dilemma is a situation in which a person is torn between what is right and what is wrong. So a person is confused, quite ambiguous, what he or she should do given on a particular situation. So just like the Hamlet's okay, the story of Hamlet, wherein he is confused whether to take his life or to keep living an unsatisfied or unhappy life. So that is the dilemma of Hamlet. So a moral dilemma involves a conflict with the very core of a person's principles and values. So the choice the person makes may leave them feeling burdened, guilty, relieved, or questioning their values. So simply to say, if there are moral dilemma, so your person, okay, your total person, or your core of being a person, your principles, your beliefs, yung mga pinaniniwalaan ninyo, it would be put into question and challenge. So you feel guilty, confused, okay, so these values you somehow question them what should be done. Like, for instance, euthanasia or doctor assisted suicide. So a person is suffering and you want the suffering to end, especially if this is a relative or someone that you know. So it might question because you might know that life cannot be taken away by someone, okay? Because life is valuable. So by that, you might have that moral dilemma whether to kill or whether to help or whether to assist the person to commit suicide just to end the suffering. Okay, that is a form of ethical dilemma. A moral dilemma often forces the individual to decide which option he or she can live with, but any outcomes are extremely unpleasant no matter what. So, moral dilemmas often used to help people think through the reasoning for their beliefs and actions and are common in psychology and philosophy classes. So, moral dilemmas simply help people think what should be done. So higher centered reasoning is used if a person is confronted by moral dilemmas. So it does really force people to decide whether to do or not to do. Okay, so that is really a challenge for most individuals. A moral dilemma exists when available choices and obligations do not allow for moral outcomes. Simply to say, when there are choices and obligations are sometimes do not go coincide to what this the desired moral outcome, that a moral dilemma exists if that is the case. In such instances, a choice or an action is anticipated or required and all of the available alternatives violate some moral obligation. So, moral dilemmas are not uncommon when organizations and individuals are working to satisfy competing interests or when personal morals and professional obligations are directly opposed. So, simply to say, um, it could happen certainly if there are some anticipated action or when there are things that needed to be done but it violates your moral obligation and how you view your morality is, that is a source of moral dilemma. So it doesn't go coincide or goes along to what you believe, to what are your moral principles, ano yung mga pinaniniwalaan, yung mga hold beliefs ninyo as a person. So it truly is moral dilemma can thus resolve to ethical issues. So, a classic example of a moral dilemma is the lifeboat dilemma, where there are only 10 spaces in the lifeboat, but there are 11 passengers on the sinking ship. So, there is a decision must be made as to who will stay behind. Well, the one person here or the one passenger here should sacrifice. So, by that decision, it's quite difficult because every life, as what they say, are important. So, there are few considerations that needed to be think of and that needed to be really rationally evaluated in making a choice of what passenger or kung sino yung kailangang i-sacrifice. Another thing is a husband learns he has a terminal illness and he decides to ask his wife for assistance in ending the pain before it gets too bad. So that could be an example of a moral dilemma because life is valuable and no one has a right to take away life from anyone. Well, if this is the case, if the decision of the husband is to take away his life because he want to end the pain, that could be an ethical dilemma or a moral dilemma towards the wife who would assist because it can be a form of murder for some people or for some situations or for some society because taking away a life, so without natural death is considered unethical to other organizations or to other social situations or society perhaps per se. Okay, and other else, these are some of the examples of moral dilemmas. And this is more of ethical issues. This is not moral dilemmas. Sorry for the mistyped word here, but these are examples of ethical issues. So just an elaboration, we have suicide, euthanasia or mercy killing, abortion, legalization or legalizing of marijuana and prostitution. I do have some examples in our discussion board forums. You might wanted to check them out. Just see them on the left part of our course of our BBL. Okay, and this would be the end of my lesson for this week. Again, I hope you could make a very good ethical or term paper about ethical issues. So good luck and see you soon physically. Thank you so much for listening.